In the bottom right-hand corner of Hardled, we have the king of the mindset himself, the king of the brain. It is the Chinese Terran player for Invictus Gaming, XY. And spawning in the top left-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Chinese Terran player, the red Terran representing Mystery Gaming, the up-and-comer. It is Oriana. And here we go. Oriana is one of the many players that was inspired by Oliveira. You can kind of hear it in the name. Now, Oriana has been competing for many years, but was previously known as Blue Ming. I don't know if that rings a bell in any of the people in the chat's minds when it comes to seeing them competing in the open qualifiers and the closed qualifiers over the past couple of years. Again, he's a very young player and up-and-comer. He's been competing in a lot of online weekly regional events, like GPO, for example, or ESL Open Cups, Kung Fu Cups, whenever he can. And at the start of the year, Blue Ming, alongside a lot of other players, did actually name change in kind of solidarity with Oliveira, because Oliveira used to go by Time, then he name changed, and then bam, world champion. That's all you need. That's all you need, Papi. But alas, a lot of Chinese players did end up, again, in solidarity, inspired by Oliveira, change their names, kind of have a revamp when it comes to their IDs, and they've been improving so much over the course of the year, and Oriana is one of them. But how will he compare against a veteran of the scene, of the region, in XY? You know, XY is kind of the polar opposite. Oriana, he's like 19 years old, or he's a young up-and-comer. XY, he's been around the block for many years, since almost the beginning. He's one of the older players in the region, but he's also just a very experienced player, very historic player, and that is why there are a couple of memes around XY. That's why, you know, he's the king of the mindsets, if you will. You know, he wrote his own book. He has so much kind of experience and so much knowledge to spread, so much wisdom as well within him, and as a result, he is still going to be quite a challenge, quite a trial here for Oriana. His first real big step, as XY is, again, a solid name in the scene. Oriana, more of a newer face, and we'll see if he can overcome that. So far, we have some pretty mirrored builds here. We're now getting into our CCs on the low ground. Again, we did have two double gas openers from both players, so we're getting into our factory production. A little bit less economic from our two players, a little bit safer instead, a little bit more aggressive in nature, as Oriana is now going to be moving out. Was just waiting for additional Reapers and that Hellion before being active on the map, hoping to find some damage and hoping not to come across too much in the center either, as XY is taking a more defensive position. He skipped the Hellion, he went for a safety Cyclone to begin with. With the new Cyclone, it is much easier to get into them early on, and again, a very safe opener here from XY. He's waiting to receive whatever comes his way, but the Reapers, they slip into the main. They slip into the main base, they get a full scout of the main as well, they get eyes on the production, they see the tech lab on that factory. A couple of SCVs are going to be going down as well, 2 SCVs. Did I say 2? Mate, we're getting up to 3, we could even get 4. 4 workers will go down. A good start here from Oriana. Again, Reapers, they do get outscaled over the course of the game, so getting rid of them and trading them for SCVs is always a good thing. On top of that, he saw that there was no add-on swap. He saw that we do have a tech lab, we do have a tank on the way, not a Cyclone. Now it's going to be a little bit easier to confirm what is coming, just because you don't need tech labs to actually make Cyclones anymore. So he's aware of the tank, and we can see that this is going to be a more dedicated tank drop, as the medevac is on the way. Meanwhile, XY going for his own counterattack, but by the time he gets across the map, we already have a Cyclone, a Hellion, Liberators going out to counterattack. But what I'm saying is that we have a defensive line here, and Oriana should be safe for now, at least until the tank arrives. Tank is on the way. Oriana throwing down a very fast third CC, trying to get into a longer game. I love that, again, the upstart, the up-and-comer, is looking to get into a macro game here against XY. He has no fear. He's not afraid. But should he be? Because, again, that drop is making its way towards the main base. We have very little in position. And if Oriana gets dragged to the main base, then that will create an opening here for this Cyclone. Here we go. The drop is coming in. Cyclone going to be applying pressure here to that natural base. And Oriana is being pulled apart. The tank is in position. The Marines and Cyclones are rotating over the boys. They have to be pulled away. At the same time, though, Oriana, he's across the map, getting economic damage of his own. Cyclone doesn't make his way through. The boys have to be pulled here. A lot of SCVs are going to be going down, but we clean up the tank. We eventually will clean up this Cyclone, but it looks like a couple more Mules and SCVs are going down. The Liberator across the map is being shooed away, but it survives. And I can say the same for this Cyclone as 9. Oh, soon to be almost 10 SCVs go down here for Oriana. He did do some counter damage, don't get me wrong. I think that was, what, 4 or 5 SCV kills by the Liberator. Oh god, no! By the Liberator as it gets caught out in the center of the map. It will fall in the end. I want to give a slight edge to XY, but something important to bear in mind is that Oriana has a faster third base. So even though he took some economic damage, he can rebuild, he can replenish those SCVs a lot faster. XY just now starts his zone on location. Now he can get away with this because XY does have map control, but alas, his CC is technically later, which means even though Oriana is down in workers, he can make up for that. He should be able to do so in a couple of SCV rounds. The other thing is that XY did throw away a tank, which means that the tank count is actually quite similar between these two players. Even though XY went into faster tank production, losing the tank was a valuable pickup here for Oriana. As we're getting into a standard opener, we have tanks, Raven production, bit of a supply block here for XY, but he's soon about to break free from it. And what's important is that looking at the upgrades here, both players did research interference matrix. Both players are going for, a very similar composition. Jeff Sim on the way, additional Raxes. No one is playing mech. It's good to bear in mind. XY has been known to play mech in the past. Again, he's a bit of a slower player in general, and he embraces the mech whenever he can. But here, buy a tank. You love to see it. At least I appreciate it, I should say. Do you have a drop coming out towards a third base? I said drop, what am I saying? We're going to be landing our third CC on location here as an orbital. It's still a regular CC here for XY. The armies are going to clash. It looks like XY gets here first. He's able to siege up and he denies the third base. Oriana just a little bit slow to rotate over to this position. Ravens take a lot of hits, but they do survive. And even though XY didn't kill anything, he's denying the third base. And it's allowing himself to catch up. Now we have the orbital being morphed in here on location. We're going to be commencing mining here at the third base as well. So XY is maintaining his lead. He's up 4 workers compared to Oriana, as he now attempts to retake that third. Tanks are getting in position. Ooh, XY, he does get a shut off. Does it back off in the end. He got the damage that he was looking for. He knew that he was behind when it comes to the timing of the third CC, so delaying the third is good enough. And now he's getting into his own orbital. Now he's mining. And XY is still sitting pretty here as our players are getting into their upgrades. We got 1-1 on the way. Stim as well for both players. And the armies are missing each other. Oriana. So XY is going to hit first. Oriana, he has a choice. Does he turn around or does he commit? And he has to commit. Yeah, third CC is forfeit, and it may even go down to the Marines, depending on how XY approaches. No, he's going straight for the kill. He's going straight for the natural. Meanwhile, Oriana, he can't waste his time here. He's got to go. He also has to make his way in because XY pushes towards the natural base. He's even pushing towards the main. Big disable on the tank. XY takes control of the ramp, pushing towards the production line. Likewise, so is Oriana. Now, there is a tank on the high ground. We do have a disable, I believe. Yeah, we do, and the Ravens are going to be pushing on forward. Likewise, XY gets on top of the production. His tanks are laying siege upon these Raxes, and the boys are being fooled. Meanwhile, Oriana still stuck in the natural. He hasn't gone for it. And as a result, XY is going to be able to clean everything up, deny combat shields. It'll finish. It barely does finish in time. But Oriana still has not made his way up the ramp. He has energy for disables. He can push in. He can try to. There are very few Marines. Oriana, he's turning around though. Again, I mean, to be fair, like, these Vikings are scary. They're zoning away the Ravens, so he didn't feel too confident pushing in. XY is on 1 base economy. Oriana, he has a CC, but no mining. He's racing back home to deal with this army. It's going to be a close one. The orbitals, they are floating back. They are all still alive. I can't say the same about the production. Here we go. We have the auto turrets. The auto turrets thrown down. The Ravens are falling as well. Big disables on the tanks. And it looks like Oriana will clean this up. He barely dives in. It cost him his Ravens, unfortunately, but he cleaned up all the tanks. Speaking of, the Ravens of XY survive. And this is big. This is huge. Energy-based units in this situation, in this kind of game state, is massive. Meanwhile, XY, he still has SCVs. When it comes to the army supply, they're pretty close. both armies are pretty comparable with each other, but XY, he has 2 bases mining, he has 36 SCVs, Oriana is all in. Again, I do feel like he could have tried to break the main base, could have tried to camp the production as well, but he wasn't really feeling too confident. Maybe that's where the experience kicks in, right, of XY. The mindset of the king, if you will. And here we go. Oriana is going to try and push on forward. Do we have disables? We have auto turrets. Big tank volley is going to be going off. But likewise, Oriana, he takes down the tanks. He pushes on forward. The Vikings, they do nothing. The Liberators as well. And the Marines, we're pushing in. Oriana, he barely breaks through, but we have reinforcements on the way again. XY is mining. He adds production. Another tank is coming in. The boys are being pulled. How good is the target firing? As the final tank goes down, GG gets called, and XY will take game number 1. GG. GG, well played, as XY will take the first game, but it was a very close one. It went down to the wire, Papi. Went all the way to a base trade that could have gone either direction. And you could see that even there towards the end, Oriana, he was able to take better fights. He was able to overcome the army of XY, but he couldn't overcome the economy. The fact that XY, he was mining, meant that he could make more units, make that he could replenish his army, and actually clean up what little that Oriana had left. GG. GG, well played. A very, very, very solid game there between our 2 players. And again, I mentioned before that some of that could have also been down to the experience as well. XY, I'm sure he's been in this situation many a time. I'm sure he's not stressed out at all. Oriana, you know, he hasn't really been a part of this portion of the ESL Masters circuit in the past. You know, he's not, he hasn't been here too often or too long. So again, he's just trying to settle himself in, and I hope that he's able to take from that first game and feel confident, right? Because that was close. That was a close game. That was a close series, or again, a close game 1. And he can totally take it here to XY. We can force an ace match. I want to believe. I want to believe. Oh. Here we go. See Dolan to a game off of Trigger. Yeah, we were casting Dolan versus Trigger yesterday. It was a really good match. I say we were casting. We were co-streaming over on the Cranky Ducklings yesterday, and we should be co-streaming whenever we can, just covering also the mainstream alongside the mainstream as well. As we are getting ready here for our second game. Game number 2 is going to be on Alcyone, or Alcyone. Apologies. And yeah, I'm really curious to see how our players do kind of adapt here after game 1. Really curious to see how they're going to approach things differently here, because if you remember, the openers themselves were pretty standard. They were very mirrored. Off of the opener, XY did go for a tank drop, and yeah, he was able to get a lead and maintain the lead in the end. But we'll see if Oriana's able to keep up, have a stronger early game, maybe even a more aggressive early game as well. Here we go. As we are just getting things ready, just making sure the player colors are set correctly as well before we jump in. And again, I'm really satisfied with what we were able to get here. I also love that we're able to cast Oriana. You know, I'm going to try and hold off my biases, but we do cast Oriana on a semi-regular basis over on our own channel, just because he does play in the online regionals. He does play in the online weekly regional events that we do host, and Oriana has been a bit of a rising star. He's been having some deep runs in these online weekly tournaments, but can he translate that here into a win in a major premier event like this? I hope so. Personally, I hope so. I hope that we get an ace match. That's at least what I want out of this. But here we go. We're going to be loading on into game número 2. And again, if you are curious, we do have the mainstream going on at the same time. Multi-Twitch it up, papi. Why not? As we are getting into game 2 and spawning in the bottom left-hand corner, we have the up-and-comer himself. We have the Reddit Terran player representing Mystery Gaming. It is Oriana. And spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Chinese Terran player, the veteran here, up 1-0 in this best-of-3 series, representing Invictus Gaming. It is XY. Here we go. So do get or set ourselves into our next game. And again, I'm really curious as to how the openers will play out. As a reminder, last game went for double gas openers into a later expansion, into a tank drop from XY, and into some more standard Reaper heavy play from Oriana instead. As we now loading into one of our maps that is pretty turtle friendly, I would say. You know, the 2 and 3 base setup here, and even 4 base setup can be quite defensive and quite solid and difficult to break once we do get into the mid game. That's if we get into the mid game, right? Like, things they were popping off as players were attempting to expand and attempting to take their third bases. But that's also how hard lead really plays out. Those that are wondering, the rush distance by ground on hard lead is actually really short. It looks like a long map, but it is a very short rush distance by ground. So, I mean, us ending up in a weird base trade like that, it makes sense. It's on brand when it comes to what happens on hard lead. We see a lot of all-ins on that map. Likewise, we can end up in some awkward situations where the armies, they miss each other and you just have to commit, you just have to go and go for something like a base trade. For now, once again, double gas openers. I should say a double gas opener from XY, just like the previous game. This time, Oriana going for a Rax expand. Only a single gas geyser here from our red Terran player. So more economic out of Oriana, more safe, and could also be aggressive here from XY. As the SCVs are soon to move out across the map. Trying to get a read on things, XY is just going to be chilling here at the Zonaga. For those wondering, in TVT, it is typically unsafe to move out with your first Reaper, just because you don't know if your opponent opened up double Rax or opened up Reactor Reaper instead. So it is, yeah, typically not really wise to move out with your first Reaper. That's why both players are keeping their Reapers back at home until they get Hellions or additional Reapers or Cyclones out instead. Speaking of, there is that second Reaper from XY. Cyclone production has commenced. Meanwhile, as he pushes out across the map, we have a bunker on the low ground, we have a Marine, and a Reaper here on the high ground. Oriana is in position. And he should be able to get the first hits in. He does zone XY away. It's a really good setup here from Oriana. XY does not find a way in. Behind this, we're getting into our 1-1-1. Again, Oriana, he should be taking an economic lead once the orbital kicks in. Meanwhile, on the other side, my eyes are on XY. Remember, in the previous game, he did go for a faster tech lab onto the factory to get into tank production. Here, he avoids the tech lab. He goes for a Cyclone first instead. Oh, but there's that medevac. So we may not see a tank drop this time, but we are going to be seeing a push nonetheless here with our Reapers, with our Cyclone. Once again, an aggressive opener here from XY. And to be fair, he scattered the bunker on the low ground, so he knows that it was a CC first, or a Rax expand from Oriana. So XY, he knows that the pressure is on him to try to punish his opposing player. Oh, but Oriana does end up catching those Reapers in the end. He gets some extra hits in, and he does take down a Reaper. Very nicely done. A Reaper, as we're going to be chasing this into the Zonaga, no! Oh, it's a trap, and we trade a Reaper for a Reaper. The Cyclones get a nice pick off. But at least Oriana does scout the Cyclones. He did spot them. I don't believe he saw the medevac, but he's aware of the aggression coming his way. He has units in between both bases. He is ready for an assault in either direction. And we have a Reaper that can dip into the natural base. We have the drop coming into the main. And Oriana, he will come across it. Just barely does come across it, and the Cyclone is not going to go down. It does escape. At the same time, XY does dip into the natural base, looking for an SCV. And it looks like he will not find one. Good defense here by Oriana so far. He should be rotating over, and he should get here in time before anything goes down. Oh, go. The Cyclone does clean up that Reaper, and behind this XY, he throws down a third CC on location. So this is a very common response and a very common reaction behind the aggression. If you're a Terran player in a TVT, and if you scout that your opponent is more economic than you in the early game, in this fashion, where they go for a faster natural base, then a way to come back, instead of doing economic damage, which XY attempted and failed to do, is to throw down a faster third. So as a result, Third TC is on location. XY has map control because of his own opener, where he was a little bit more aggressive. So he's, out on the map. He's making sure that his third is safe and sound. And Oriana is contained to 2 bases. He's got his own third on the way, don't get me wrong, but it's going to take a little bit longer for him to really get it up and running. As we do have a double cyclone drop towards that natural base. They're going to be able to get a couple of SCVs. Oh, the lock-on! The lock-on is real. 2 cyclones go down. A big pick-off here from Oriana. Very nicely done. At the same time, we have a drop into the main base. Workers are going down. There is a tank in position alongside these Ravens, so we're going to have to respect that. But Oriana's forcing a lot of loss. Oh, the friendly fire! No! The tank shots! Oh my god! 6 SCVs! Imagine one more shot. One more volley as XY, he bunched everything up. Oh my god, Oriana, Papi. The smooth moves here from Oriana, just turning water into wine, making some magic happen, given the opportunity here, and that was beautiful. That was almost game ending. Imagine if the entire mineral line went down to 2 tank shots. That would have been crazy. And there's still potential. I mean, there's no repair. These SCVs are still very low. They're not going to be regenerating HP, and a follow-up drop could wreak havoc here in the main base. We got to bear that in mind. It's going to be in the back of our mind here as we settle into game 3. Going to be saturating our third bases. Tank lines are being formed. Once again, it's going to be bio tank from both XY and Oriana. And yeah, we are just going to be settling down here after an intense couple of moments. After an intense couple of moments, we are going to be calming things down. We have the Ravens and tanks being set up here. Looking at the units tab, we have an even tank count. We have a scan into the main. Oriana wants to make sure he's aware of the kind of production that he's up against. Again, bio tank. Oriana just building himself up back at home as well. Now, one big difference here, one big differential is that XY has 3 Ravens as opposed to the 1 of Oriana. So XY has a lot of potential here in a back and forth fight. Disables, they impact these engagements so much here, disabling 1, 2, 3 tanks. That could be the end for you even, depending on the engagement, depending on how this does turn out. So Oriana has to be very careful with his positioning. Even if he sieges first, that will not guarantee him a win in the fight. Here we go. We're going to have to rotate around. Here we go. The rocks are being knocked down. At the same time, 4CC on location is going to be delayed by this cyclone. Oh my god. Actually, 4 SCVs do fall here, forcing reinforcements to turn back around and deal with the cyclone eventually. But Oriana, his move out has been completely unscouted. That's why he doesn't know he is in position here to protect his third base. Oriana, instead, he goes for a drop into the natural. And again, we could even go for a drop into the main. He's going to unload here in the natural base. We have big disables. The Vikings, they shut down almost a full medevac. Yeah, and this drop was not worthwhile at all. Workers didn't go down. We distracted some of the army. The main forces here of Oriana did not find a way in. And XY, he is looking solid. He is a wall. Oriana gonna try to move in our position. Now, these Ravens have significantly less energy than before, but still plenty. Again, it's 3 Raven. Here we go. Oriana gonna try and push in. But alas, he has to respect the positioning of his opponent. Big anti-armor missile on the Marines. The Vikings, they overextend as well. Boys are being pulled away from the third base. And Oriana, good positioning so far with his Marines. Oh, doesn't want to overextend. Another anti-armor missile. Just not allowing XY to engage. As Oriana's going to back off from here. His tanks are looking a little bit exposed. And Oriana, he goes for a drop into the main. Go for the mineral line, Papi. Go for it. Send it, Papi. Send it. Raven almost does go down. We do have the Marines rotating over into the main base. And XY, he is going to clean this up. No! The Marines, they get into the mineral line. And SCVs are falling. Again, they were softened up from earlier. 10 workers go down. On top of that, we still lay siege upon the third base, and we're denying so much mining time. Oriana getting so far ahead. He's able to take a massive economic lead. No mining whatsoever here. We do have a 4th base being set up here from XY. So at least he is technically on a 3-base economy. But that's 15 workers going down. We have big disables, and XY will clean this up. I do want to say that Oriana did feel like he overstayed his welcome here. These tanks, they should have left a little bit earlier. And as a result, Oriana is still... Sorry, XY is still in this. XY is up in tanks, he's up in Vikings, he's up in Ravens. He still has all 3, by the way. All 3 Ravens are still alive. Oriana instead going for a much more bio-heavy composition. With more Marines. Can he pull this off, though? Can he pull XY apart? Again, XY is taking the role of the defender. He's just focusing on trying to fortify himself on 4 bases. Oriana, he's trying to break him. He's trying to find an opening. 5th CC now on location for Oriana. Tanks are here, though, and XY, he is just walling up, getting additional starports, working on 2-2. Oriana double expanding, going for a 5th and a 6th CC. That's 3 3s on the way, and yeah, we do see Oriana just vying for map control here. Maxing himself out as well, as Oriana is switching back into Vikings. So earlier, Oriana was avoiding Vikings entirely, going for a heavy medevac composition instead. As a result, XY had air control, but now he's going back into Vikings. Even restarting Raven production. Disable on the way. Defense Matrix on the way, I should say. As the game is going to settle down from here, Oriana is keeping all of his tanks back at home, and he's just being active with Marines. Just trying to rotate around, just trying to keep up with the movement of XY. Likewise, though, XY is able to keep up with him. He's still actually falling behind in Vikings. But a massive anti-armor missile, and Oriana, he cannot engage. Not anymore. He has to back off. We have 2 more starports in production for Oriana. Love to see them. And the game is going to settle from here. We had a pretty intense moment, and Oriana was doing a lot of economic damage earlier. As a result, he's been able to mass expand and even take the Rich Jesse and Gas Geyser here towards the north. But XY, his defenses were too good, and he is maxing out himself. So 2 maxed out armies. When it comes to the details, Oriana, he will hit 3-3 first before XY. But XY still kept his Ravens alive from earlier. He still has that Raven lead, and he is out positioning Oriana. This is completely unscattered. Oriana doesn't quite know where this is coming from, and this planetary is looking exposed. Can we go for it? Up. We go for the gold instead. Yeah, this CC is going to go down. And XY is going to keep on pushing, but it runs into Vikings. Full medevac goes down. And Oriana, oh, he's being stopped by these rocks. He cannot collapse here on the rest of this drop. The Ravens. 1 Raven goes down. Good pick off from XY. Again, we're trading Marines for gas-based units. Additional Marines are going down. But that was worth it from XY. He killed a base and he killed a Raven. Here we go. We are pushing out. Once again, looking at the units tab, Oriana has taken a Viking lead, which means he now has an answer to the Ravens of his opponent. He can try to zone them away. Speaking of zoning, Liberator does arrive. Oh, we do have a tank shot to the face, though. As Oriana, he's trying to wedge himself in between these bases. Big anti-armor missile on the Vikings. As a result, XY cannot engage. Oh my god, as we just carpet bomb the tanks here on the right-hand side, but the Marines are going to go down. A bold move from Oriana, but he lost all of his Marines. And he doesn't find his way up the ramp. He does take down a couple of tanks. He's rotating over towards the right-hand side. There are only 2 tanks in position. Now only 1 tank. XY instead coming in from behind. And we have the mass disable. Massive disables. The Vikings are going to engage. We have an anti-armor missile on Oriana this time. And he has to back off. XY, he takes a Viking lead. He still has the Raven lead as well. Again, Ravens are so versatile in this position. When it comes to disables, auto turrets, anti-armor missiles, like they can make or break a fight. We're getting a couple of free tanks. We got one free tank. Oof, barely not two. Barely not, as Oriana just trying to reinforce, just trying to force the issue as well, but he just cannot push in. Not this time. That's why he's ready for it. A couple of tank flows are going off. You can see XY rotating everything over. +1 ship weapons done for Oriana, on the way for XY. Oh, tank is going to go down almost for free. Oriana now working towards high-sec auto tracking, Neo Steel frames, all the upgrades you would want here in a late game TVT scenario. And Oriana, he's going to give up on this position. There are no sensor towers, by the way. XY he doesn't see. He doesn't see the rotation of Oriana. This base is going to go down with the reinforcements. Meanwhile, the main army, he wants to try to catch the forces of XY mid-rotation. He's looking for a way in. CC goes down. You can see XY just rotating everything over. Big disables. And Oriana will get here first. Oh, the anti-armor missiles on the Vikings means that Oriana has to back off, at least when it comes to the air. But the tanks are still going ham. XY, he's got 30 Vikings to the 21 of Oriana. He's got 8 Ravens. Like, XY, he firmly has air control. And with that air control, that means ground control as well. You disable, tanks push forward. Additional disables are thrown down. We do have an anti-armor missile, but is it too late? As the Vikings are going toe-to-toe with each other, and XY, he still has a Viking lead. And he forces Oriana back. Yeah, he has to land. Oriana does have the better economy. He's even double expanding. He's sending his Marines towards a goal-based location. But again, it's all about Vikings. It's one of those things where early on, like, tank Raven is really, like, what dictates the pace of the game. But as the game progresses, it's all about Sky Terror. No, the Ravens, no! I say that, 2 Ravens go down. Ay, ay, ay. To the Marines. But again, your tanks mean nothing if you don't have the vision, if you don't have control of the skies. With those Vikings. As Oriana, he even takes the planetary. He takes the base, one of the bases of XY. He's pushing on forward here towards the goal base once again. He's gonna get a tank. The Viking counts have evened up. The upgrades to the Vikings are even as well. Shows the anti-armor missile. Oh, and it connects on Oriana. Once again, taking a lot of losses there. As Oriana, he's just mass expanding. He's getting planetaries everywhere. All over XY. As a result, even though Oriana, he's been trading a little bit worse, like he has been losing and bleeding out more Vikings, the reality is that because of his economy, he can sustain those losses. He can sustain himself. As he's rotating over. No sensor towers. Again, sensor towers are so important in TVT. XY, he doesn't see the movement. He doesn't see the rotation until now with the scan. Takes XY that much longer to realize what's going on. That much longer to react. In this position, it may just be better to just look at the units tab. I mean, we have 3-3 vehicle weapons and vehicle ship weapons on the way for our players. We have Liberators in production for Oriana. Oriana does have a slight Viking lead, but it's all about the anti-armor missile. Once it connects for both players. We do Dorito dust, it's on everyone. Both Viking armies, they disengage. XY catching some strays. And it looks like the orbital may go down as well. Yeah, the gold base is going to be denied. We just need vision. we can't quite see it. There we go. We go for the scan. Orbital taking too many hits, and it will not go down. It will go up, actually. It'll fly. It will take to the skies. As the planetary of Oriana, ooh, looking a little bit worse for wear. But it looks like Oriana, he has taken a big lead here. Look at the banks, again, because of the base count, because of the map control that Oriana has had. XY, he's been suffocated this game. He just hasn't been able to breathe freely. Here we go. Now Oriana has a massive Viking lead. Big anti-armor missiles. Big debuffs here on the Vikings, but they're going to be going ham on each other, and Oriana still has the Viking lead. And he's going to be able to overwhelm the army of XY. GG gets called, and Oriana ties up the series 1-1. GG. Oh my god. GG. Well played, Oriana. He fights back in a longer macro game, but even before that, he was so much more active than XY here. At times, he was bleeding out units, don't get me wrong. At times, I did feel like Oriana was overextending, especially in the first half when he didn't have the Viking lead, and when he was taking some rough fights, some rough trades, but he was able to really snowball out of control with his economy. That's what really propelled him forward here. The fact that he was mass expanding, taking the gold base, even taking some of XY's bases as well. Oriana, he was just all over the map, taking actually making use of his speed and his APM, something that he does have over XY. And yeah, Oriana, he was able to eventually snowball out of control, suffocate, and just choke XY out, not allowing him to expand freely and actually have a good economy. And despite the better trades from XY early on, in the end, it was not enough to overcome the might that was Oriana. And this means we get an ace match. We're going all the way to game number 3. Oh, let's go. And really, this is what we all wanted. We all wanted an ace match. It's going to be on Oceanborn. Ooh, let's go. I'm just happy to see Oriana just like shake it off a little bit, right? Game 1 was a little bit rough, and you could definitely argue that some of his decision making was a little bit lacking there in game number 1 when it came to the base trade. But here in game 2, felt like Oriana was a little more decisive. You know, he was a little more comfortable now getting into his second game. And here coming into game 3, the pressure is now on XY. XY, he's the veteran. You know, he's the favorite player. A lot of people know who XY is. Not many know who Oriana is, and oh boy, can he pull this off? As we are going to be getting into game number 3. And never mind. We're meant to be on Oceanborn, but we made a map. Sorry, we made the game on Golden Forge. I don't think that's correct. So we're gonna have to take a moment here to remake and set things up for that ace match. And this could really go either way at this point. I think a lot of it is gonna come down to openers and momentum early on. Like again, I'm a little bit biased, and I'm a little bit leaning towards Oriana. You know, I always champion the next generation, right? These younger players rising up through the ranks and surpassing the old guard. That's something that I've always been a fan of, at least. But at the same time, I know that XY has a lot of fans. XY, because he's been around for so long, he does have quite a stable fan base here. And we are getting ready for our next game. Never mind. Just some technical difficulties going on, but we'll get it sorted. We'll get it sorted. Oh. But yeah, I know there's a lot of XY fans. I know he has his own team. I think Scarlet's on that clan. XY fans on, I think on Asia or maybe NA. A lot of memes were had about him, and yeah, you know, he's a really fun player to get behind as well. Don't get me wrong. Like in an ideal world, I want them both to do well here in this group stage, in this Swiss format. But for now, only one can rise and the other must fall. And oh boy, it doesn't get easier from here either. You know, you got some Titans in the group as well, like your Oliveras, like Mia Micah, of course, the last King of the Sea. And we'll be getting into them as, you know, the tournament progresses, as time goes on. No pun intended. And yeah, it just took a little bit here to get things going. To get things going, as the lobby has been made, and we are getting ready for game number 3, the final game of this series. As a reminder, for every one of these matches, best of 3s. No best of 5s, not yet. Not until the playoffs, not until the later stages of this tournament. Oh. So that makes it that much more brutal here, as best of 3s they are quite short series. As we are just going to be getting ready for that. And I hope everyone in the chat has been enjoying themselves. I love this mass planetary expand. Yeah, it was great. It was so aggressive. Like these aggressive expansions here out of Oriana, just throwing down planetaries wherever he could. And yeah, it was really fun to see. Really fun to see play out. It is going to be a little bit more difficult on this map because we are loading into Oceanborn. Because we are loading into Oceanborn, there are significantly less bases to take. There are less bases to take, and it is more difficult to actually hold on to your 4th and 5th base on this map as well. And we can get into it. We can get into it if it becomes applicable here, if the game does go on into the mid game, into the late game once again. Also, I want to give a quick shout out as well to Wardy, because Wardy is casting on the mainstream, and apparently he's solo casting at the moment as well. Just like us. He was slotted to have a co-caster, but he is alone today. So power to him. Much love, much support as we get through these regions and this day of casting in a way together. As spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Oceanborn, we have the Chinese Terran player, the up-and-comer himself, tying up the series 1-1 in that last game, representing Mystery Gaming. It is Oriana. And spawning in the top left-hand corner, we have its opponent. We have the Chinese Terran player representing Invictus Gaming, being forced into the ace match. It is XY. Here we go. Again, game 3, the ace match, and we have already some varying openers. Once again, 2 games in a row. XY, actually, every single game, technically. XY is going for a double gas opener. Double gas opener here. So again, quote-unquote safer, and can also be quite aggressive as well. It does keep you safe against something like a proxy, like something like Proxy 2-Rax. You will be at a bit of a disadvantage, or you will have a solid setup to defend against something like that. It will give you access to units earlier on. Meanwhile, Oriana going for a Rax expand, a single gas opener, a faster natural base. We saw this out of Oriana in game 2, and we saw that he wasn't really punished for it. As a reminder, typically when you find out that you're behind in your natural base timing, XY, once he figures this out, he should be going for a faster third base on location. That's what we've been seeing so far from him, and it's most likely how he's going to be approaching this as well, unless he has something else in store for us. Now, Factory is on the way, again slightly faster here for XY because of the faster gas. He can get into a faster starport. There's a world out there that where if I was casting Gumiho or Dolan or Ziggy or Milky Cow or some of these other aggressive Terran players, then this could even lead into a one-base all-in. But XY, he's much more sensible, and he's expanding, going for a CC on the low ground. As we did pull out of gas. Again, going for a slightly later expansion. XY, bold move. He goes across the map with his first Reaper. He gets a couple of hits in, but he doesn't quite delay the CC yet. Oh! As he goes for the SCV, and he will get a kill. A very risky play here from XY, but it pays off. He does delay the CC. I mentioned before that it's usually really risky to move out with your first Reaper like this, but again, it was a risk that paid off. Now we have 2 Reapers coming in, and we're going to delay the CC again. Ay. Second SCV goes down. And this is getting out of hand here. We went for a reactor into the factory. We're making 2 Cyclones at a time, but it's going to take a long time for them to come out. More SCVs are going down. Oriana being a little bit too greedy behind this. No Marines, no additional units. He does snipe one of those Reapers, but he lost 4 SCVs. A big blow to his economy. Not like this. And after the openers kind of wrap up, CC finishes at the same time as XY's. And XY, he has a worker lead. He is up, what, 4 or 5 SCVs. And Oriana's in a really rough position. He is actually not stopping Cyclone production. Huh. Alright, Oriana. You have my attention now. Going into these Cyclones did almost kill him. Well, it may have killed him. It did give XY a solid lead in the economy because he wasn't making Marines, because he didn't make any Hellions. He was waiting a little bit longer. And now the pressure is on Oriana to get damage done. We have 4 Cyclones, and we have a Banshee on the way. We're looking for SCV kills. We need SCV kills. As Oriana pushes out, XY does have a Reaper in position to go into the main base, get a scout, and maybe get some more SCVs. Meanwhile, back at home, we have a defensive tank. We're getting to Raven production. Second tank is on the way. XY has a pretty solid defensive position here. The bunker as well should keep the tank safe. Oof. As you can see here, a big tank volley onto the Cyclones. None of them go down, but they are very weak. Oh, God! As Oriana overextends, loses a Cyclone for nothing. The Banshee's on the way, and again, we have even more pressure on this Banshee to kill workers to give Oriana a lead. 3rd CCs are thrown down. Speaking of, 3rd CC is delayed by the Reaper. Gets another worker kill. And this has been a disastrous start for Oriana, as he will clean up the Reaper eventually. And again, as he's getting into his 3rd CC, so is XY. And now we're going to be pushing out. We have a higher tank count because XY wasn't spending time making Cyclones. XY's tank count is pretty insane. He's got 3 tanks to the 1 tank of Oriana. 1 tank here on the low ground. We have 2 Ravens, so even with Oriana having a defensive position, the tanks can be disabled, and XY, he can break in. He can push into these bases. It's going to be a tough hold here for Oriana. Not impossible, but just difficult. So he gets across the map. He's going to be delaying the CC here of XY. Good pickoff. Here comes the army. There are the disables. First disable, the second disable goes down. A big tank volley is going to be going off, and both tanks fall. And XY, he can just keep on pushing. What is there to stop him? There's 2 Cyclones, a couple of Marines. The boys, they have to be pulled. We have an auto turret. Auto turrets are thrown down. 1 tank gets disabled. SCVs are falling. And even if Oriana cleans this up, he's taking so many losses. Oh, good target firing on the Ravens. Very nicely done. Across the map, the Banshee is wreaking havoc here. 8 SCVs go down. We were talking about the Banshee earlier, and this is keeping Oriana in this game. If it wasn't for this Banshee, he may be dead. 10, 11, 12 SCVs. The Banshee going ham. 13, soon to be 14 workers. Where is the answer? We have tanks, but the tanks, they do not shoot up. Oh my God. 18, 19 SCVs go down, and just like that, Even though Oriana, he was at death's door, that Banshee is the real MVP. 19 SCV kills for one Banshee. And suddenly, Oriana, he's up in workers. We're taking our third base. Both players are, to be fair. Third bases are at around the same time. Looking at the units tab, in the overall armies, XY still has a lead. If you look at the units tab, XY, he has double the tank count of his opponent. But he only has one Raven. Remember, one Raven did die earlier. So Oriana, he can take a fight. He may be down in tanks, but he's up in Ravens, so he can disable. Here we go. XY is going for a counterattack. He wants to try to deny this third base. He's getting in position. A very tense moment. Vikings, they have arrived, and XY is being forced back. Oh! The Marines do not get a Raven. They do soften them up. Oh, once again, the Ravens taking a lot of hits. They do land the disables, though. But it's not enough. There's not enough on the ground. Oriana's being forced back. XY still has an overwhelming army, and he's pushing all the way towards the third base. The boys have to be pulled. Boys are being pulled. They're going to be repairing up, topping up these tanks. And Oriana's still down in army supply. He has a worker lead. He's up almost 10 workers. Say that's 7 workers. Here we go. He's building up that tank count. We go for a drop into the main, which is spotted. That's why he doesn't find a way in. But he's looking for one. He's just rallying. He's sending everything across the map. All of his reinforcements. He rotates around. He's looking to push in towards the natural, but the tanks are in position. That's why looking for a weak point here in the armor. As he goes for the drop, he sieges up his tanks. The boys, they have to be pulled. We get a couple of disables, 2 disables even. But that's these tanks. This unsiege was late. And it looks like XY, he is pushing through. He cleans up 25 SCVs. Oh my god, there are only tanks remaining here for Oriana. And barely any. Only 2 of them. The Vikings, they land. But there are Marines. The Vikings do not clean up the tanks. And Oriana, he's running out of steam. It was a close series. It was a close fight as well. That Banshee almost did it on its own. But XY, he knew that he was up in tanks. He knew that even though he had taken a lot of economic losses, he had the stronger army. And he was able to leverage that into this situation, into this eventual push. And now XY, he cripples the economy of Oriana. He still has the tank lead. Tank is going to go down towards the center of the map. Boys being pulled once again. Good disable. A good cleanup. Oriana, he takes down 4 tanks. XY trying to get a 4th base on location. Oriana has to make sure that that does not happen. He needs to stop this. He needs to deny this. Here we go. The Raven. Overextending a little bit. XY is in position. He may only have 1 tank, but it is sieged. As XY rotates over towards his 3rd base, so does Oriana. He's trying to find his own counter damage. He comes across a 5th CC, which does finish. Finishes up just in time. XY sims on forward, getting on top of the tanks. Both tanks will go down. And suddenly this position is that much weaker for Oriana. No medevacs, no support, just Marines. And yeah, XY, he has defended. He gets away with a 4th base. He gets away with a 5th CC. He's up 2 bases compared to Oriana. And things are looking dire. Things have been dire here for Oriana. He's going for some drop play, a Hail Mary play here across the map, but he comes across the army. No! Almost loses his medevacs. 4th CC gets cancelled. And XY, he has map control. He has the better economy. He's building up his army. He still has to consolidate his forces. Still doesn't quite have everything together yet. Oh, loses the medevac. Loses 2. A good moment there for Oriana. But as he moves out, the double drop moves in. We get into the 3rd base. We camp the production as well. denying these Raxes. Going straight for the tank. And whatever damage she can get done. 11 SCVs, a tank. Here comes the rest of the reinforcements. The main army of XY pushing through the center of the map. We have 4 tanks, 34 Marines. Oriana, he does have a decent defensive position here. He's got a tank, now 2. But he's being pulled apart. He is being pulled apart here. As the drop comes in from behind. SCVs are going down. XY, he sees an opening. Oriana, he does abandon his third base, and 2 tanks go down. The SCVs as well. Oriana, he was going for another big push across the map instead. He's going to try to force a base trade as the third base goes down. But back at home, XY is in position. GG gets called, and XY will take it 2-1, taking down Oriana.